Tonight on ABC News Live Prime, government shutdown. For the first time in nearly 7 years, the U.S. government shuts its doors for a full shutdown as lawmakers blame those across the aisle and millions of federal workers worry about what comes next. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth tells a meeting of the U.S. military's top brass that he no longer wants to see fat generals and admirals, warning that the military under his leadership will be dramatically changed. The president suggests the military should use dangerous American cities as training grounds. Our Martha Raddatz has the latest. Double threat in the Atlantic. Two powerful storms bringing strong surf to the East Coast, intense enough to topple these homes and sweep them out to sea, where that wild weather is heading next. It's the end of an era. The death of AOL's dial-up internet is here, but once upon a dial-up tone, it was the first way many people were able to get widespread access to the online world. Tonight, many are saying goodbye to this sound and its transformative technology. And Henry Winkler has spent more than 5 decades as one of America's acting treasures. Is now also a beloved author of children's books. Tonight he tells us what he's most proud of. Dyslexic.
I am completely dyslexic. I was told I would never achieve. It was hard for me to read. And now I am the author. This is our 40th children's book.
From ABC News, this is Prime with Lindsay Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Let's take a look now at Capitol Hill, where the government has shut down for the first time in nearly 7 years. At midnight, the government ran out of money. Both sides are blaming the other, while millions of federal workers brace for what is a very uncertain future. What was the final chance to keep the government open failed tonight in the Senate. Majority Leader Thune and Minority Leader Schumer had this to say.
Well, I know why we're doing this, Mr. President. The Democrats' far left base said jump, and Democrat leaders said how high. But the far left's determination to oppose anything President Trump has ever said or done is not a good reason for subjecting the American people to the pain of a government shutdown.
It's natural that people understand that Donald Trump and the Republicans want to shut down and Democrats do not. We need to deal with this health care crisis now, not later. But the Republican bill fails to do that. I urge my Republican colleagues instead to join with us, work in good faith to keep the government open, keep costs down.
President Trump is threatening to fire federal workers and cut programs and benefits. He also said he can do things that are irreversible. Democrats rallied on Capitol Hill earlier today in a show of unity and demanded that Medicaid cuts be restored, saying Republicans would rather shut down the government than protect the health care of the American people. And with the government shutdown now in effect, Jay O'Brien joins us from Capitol Hill. Jay, what happens now?
Lindsay, it means the apparatus of the federal government slowly grinds to a halt. The longer a shutdown goes, the worse the effects become because money begins to dry up. For the nearly 4 million federal employees, it means that if the government shutdown continues to roll into the month of October, they will start missing paychecks. The first federal paycheck of October is already going to be processed because it's money that was already set to go out this week. But then there's another paycheck that comes up for federal employees. We're talking about troops, their families, other federal employees in the middle of the month. And if the shutdown lasts until then, they will miss that crucial paycheck. There will be some employees that are told to come to work and still work without getting paid, and they will ultimately get back pay assuming the shutdown ends. Those are employees like TSA agents, air traffic controllers, people that do weather forecasting for the National Weather Service. And then other federal employees will be furloughed and told not to show up to work. That will start to happen today in Washington, D.C., OMB says. Those employees will start to get their marching orders as of today. But as the shutdown grinds on, if it lasts for a certain chunk of time, money will start to dry up in key federal programs like SNAP, which is the Nutrition Assistance Program for lower-income Americans, like WIC, which is nutrition assistance for mothers and infants, and the list goes on. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, that will still be processed, but you could also see delays there too the longer the shutdown rolls. It is a slow grinding, as I said, of the federal government to a halt that could be seriously detrimental for millions of Americans.
And if history is any indication, any predictions here as far as how long a shutdown could go on?
The longest shutdown in U.S. history was 35 days, Lindsay. That was in the first Trump administration. But right now, neither side is really close to a deal. As you heard earlier, Democrats are holding out. They want an extension of Obamacare tax credits. Republicans are accusing Democrats of holding a gun to the head, as the vice president said earlier, of the federal government to negotiate. Democrats have said, look, they want to negotiate with Republicans. Republicans have said, don't do that with the federal government in play. We'll negotiate at a later date. But it's really up to Democrats here. They feel right now that they have the political momentum to try to extract this concession on these Obamacare tax credits out of Republicans. They feel they have the political will, but the longer a shutdown grinds on, the question facing Democrats is how long will they be willing for this to last?
Jay O'Brien from Capitol Hill. Thanks so much, Jay. And not long before the shutdown, we caught up with New Jersey Senator Andy Kim. All right, let's just start here. Where do we go at this point?
Right now, it is inevitable that we're going to have a shutdown in 3 hours. And that is an abdication of leadership. You know, that really falls upon President Trump, the leadership in the Senate and the House on the Republican side that control the gavel. So this is something where the American people are waking up, seeing the type of abdication of leadership and dereliction of duty. You know, I'm here at the Senate. We've been here all day. We've been trying to negotiate all week. But what I will say, who is not here are the people in the House of Representatives on the Republican side. Speaker Johnson sent them home, told them not to show up. So while those service members that you were just talking about, federal workers, are going to have to show up to work tomorrow and not get paid, these Republican members of Congress refuse to even show up to work and do their job. That is why we're here today.
You held a town hall tonight to talk with your constituents about the impacts of a shutdown. Tell us about that conversation.
Yeah, right after the votes that we had in the Senate, I did a telephone town hall to reach across all across New Jersey. We had over 6,000 people dial in to be able to listen to this. And what I heard from them was really powerful. People talking about, there was a woman named Lucinda who talked about the concerns that she has. She told me to hold the line because she cannot afford her health care. She would have to give it up if she's not able to continue to get the support for the ACA through the marketplace. I had a woman named Barbara who talked about the challenges that her family's facing, but she put it in that context, saying that this is a challenge that people are hearing and facing all across America right now. This is real. You know, this is something that cannot be looked at as just some partisan power struggle, as a tug of war between political parties trying to see who they blame. Real lives are at stake. Tomorrow and in the coming days, millions of Americans will realize that their health care is going to go through the roof. Many of them will see their prices double. About 4.5 million Americans will lose their health care. Over 20 million Americans will have to pay extraordinary prices. This is a crisis of the Republicans' making, and we have to do everything we can to solve it.
We spoke to a Republican senator from West Virginia, Shelley Moore Capito, a few hours ago. We asked her if she was concerned about the cuts to the Affordable Care Act that Democrats are in part shutting down the government over. Let's take a listen to what she had to say.
I'm absolutely concerned. 60,000 West Virginians get a subsidy for their premium support. That doesn't expire until December 31st. That begins a new year of premium support in January. We have time to work on this issue. We've been talking about this issue with our Democrat counterparts, with the president. I think the president is very interested in seeing that we reach a solution here. And so I think that what you're going to see is some kind of compromise, but we have to keep the government open while we reach and have those negotiated talks on premium support.
If Republicans are willing to negotiate over this, why shut the government down now when the deadline of the ACA is December 31st?
Well, it's not December 31st, and that's the problem, is that is out of touch with what is actually happening. The fact is that the open enrollment begins on November 1st when it comes to people getting their health care. And a lot of families are going to be looking at the increased costs and say, I can't afford that. I'm going to have to lower the type of coverage I get or get rid of it altogether and have to make some really tough choices. They cannot wait till Thanksgiving or the end of the year to be able to get that clarity. This is a crisis right now, and we have to respond to it. And that is what I just fail to see, how my colleagues can be so callous in the face of so many challenges that Americans are facing with their loved ones or themselves to get care when they need it most.
Just how concerned are you about the fact that the White House is threatening not to just furlough workers, but to fire them?
Yeah, I mean, again, it just shows you just the extremism of what they're doing. And they're threatening to fire federal workers. They have already fired hundreds of thousands of federal workers. Their budget that they're trying to ram through would fire hundreds of thousands of federal workers. It is an attack upon our government and, frankly, our Constitution in terms of how we're trying to engage. And I say that as someone who worked as a career federal public servant in the civil service. I worked under both Republicans and Democrats in the White House. These are the people that are helping our government, helping our American people get the services that they need. And again, the idea that these service members and our government employees are showing up to work every day, even though they're not getting paid, while Speaker Johnson has given the Republicans in the House of Representatives a free vacation while they are still getting paid, by the way. The president and the members of Congress get paid. I find that to be absurd. That's why I'm not taking pay as long as government is shut down. I'm going to stand with our federal workers and the American people to be able to help try to deliver the needs that so many of them are calling out for desperately.
New Jersey Senator Andy Kim, we thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And now we're joined by Avery Harper, our political director here at ABC News. So, Avery, who are the federal workers expected to be furloughed or fired as a result of the shutdown?
Right. So anyone who is not considered essential, so those workers who are not protecting life or federal property, can be furloughed or sent home without pay during a shutdown. So when you think about some of these federal agencies in places across the country, think about workers who are performing administrative tasks or research tasks or policy functions. Those are the kinds of folks who are going to be furloughed. Now, in shutdowns past, we did not see federal workers fired during a government shutdown, but we have seen the Trump administration dangle the threat of firings, and that, of course, comes on the heels of other firings of federal workers that we've seen since President Trump has taken office. So, of course, we are watching to see if that happens, and if it happens, if those firings can even pass legal muster.
Republicans, as we know, are saying a shutdown could have been averted if Democrats simply supported a clean, continuing resolution, as they described it. But what kind of pressure are Democrats facing from their base to hold firm?
Right. I mean, there is polling that suggests that Democratic voters want to see their party fight harder against this administration. And let's be frank, in Washington, D.C., Democrats have very little power. And so this is a big, visible moment for them to try and force the Republican Party and the Trump administration's hand. And so they argue that this is really about the Affordable Care Act, about those subsidies, about Medicaid cuts, about health care access. Republicans, they say, need to come to the table and negotiate a deal on this. But it remains to be seen if Democratic voters or any Americans are going to side with them on this. This is a huge political gamble.
And so at this point, where does Congress go from here in the days, perhaps weeks ahead?
Well, those lawmakers are going to have to come to the table, come together and negotiate. But because tensions are so high, it's unclear if there's any sort of off-ramp here. It is remarkable because one of the core responsibilities of Congress is to fund the government. And tonight, both parties and lawmakers in both parties have shown that they are unable to do that.
And what role does President Trump play at this point?
I mean, it's no secret that the Republican Party is taking its cues from the president. So what he says or does in this moment could help this shutdown that is most certainly coming, help that come to a close, or it could extend it. We have seen the president sort of inflame tensions here. The question becomes, does he encourage Republicans to come to the table with Republicans to end this shutdown, or does he encourage them to hold the line on this?
ABC News political director Avery Harper, we thank you so much. Now to the other major headline tonight, the unprecedented message to the military's top brass. Secretary Hegseth outlined his vision to reshape the U.S. military in front of 800 top officers and their enlisted aides today. Hegseth also promised to change the culture of the armed forces. President Trump later suggested the military should use dangerous American cities as training grounds. Martha Raddatz has the latest.
In an unprecedented meeting, which the former Weekend Fox and Friends host broadcast live, Secretary Pete Hegseth warning hundreds of combat-tested generals, admirals, and senior officers flown in from around the world that the military under his leadership will be dramatically changed.
No more identity months, DEI offices, dudes in dresses. No more climate change worship. No more division, distraction, or gender delusions. No more debris. We are done with that.
While the generals and admirals sat largely silent through the speech, Hegseth said military fitness and standards will be enforced. No more fat generals or admirals, he said.
I don't want my son serving alongside troops who are out of shape, or in combat unit with females who can't meet the same combat arms physical standards as men.
For those ground combat roles, which women have been performing for more than a decade, the high male standard will now be the norm.
If that means no women qualify for some combat jobs, so be it.
And Hegseth defending the firing of more than a dozen senior officers, including the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, C.Q. Brown, and the head of the Navy, Lisa Franchetti.
For too long, we've promoted too many uniformed leaders for the wrong reasons, based on their race, based on gender quotas, based on historic so-called firsts.
But Hegseth was not just talking personnel, but policy. The rules of engagement meant to protect civilians and non-combatants, those, he said, have become too politically correct.
We also don't fight with stupid rules of engagement. We untie the hands of our warfighters to intimidate, demoralize, hunt, and kill the enemies of our country.
President Trump then took the stage to address the officers.
And if you don't like what I'm saying, you can leave the room. Of course, there goes your rank, there goes your future.
Telling his audience of some of the most experienced warfighters in a generation, the military should practice on American cities.
I told Pete we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military.
Martha Raddatz joins us now. Martha, what was the reaction like in the room?
Lindsay, I'm told that many of the officers in the audience were especially jarred by those remarks about training in American cities. Others say they are now thinking about where their red lines are because Lindsay, Hegseth made clear that if they don't like what they're hearing from him, they should resign. Lindsay?
Our powerful words. Martha Raddatz, our thanks to you. And joining us now is former NATO Supreme Allied Commander General Wesley Clark. Thank you so much for your time. So what do you make of the overall message of today's military gathering?
No problem with lethality. All these generals and admirals are war fighters. That's the way they've been brought up. If Secretary Hegseth says we're doing something wrong, maybe that's to be looked at for the policy level. But I will say this, one of the great things about our warfighting skill is that we do take care of our soldiers and we take care of the innocent civilians that are there. We know that when we go into fight, we have to use the right amount of force on the right adversary, and that's what it's about. Now, as far as what President Trump said, I heard much of the speech, and my concern is, honestly, that we got to be really careful about using American troops in the United States. They don't belong here. There's a way they can be used if the Insurrection Act is declared. But I'm looking at the threat environment in these cities, and I don't see a threat environment that justifies calling out U.S. troops. If you take the case of Portland, Oregon, you've got state and local authorities there. They seem perfectly capable of handling it. So I'm worried about what the, let's call it the hidden agenda might be behind this, because there's no reason. These troops are and these leaders should be focused on our allies, on the concerns, the security threats facing the United States beyond our borders. That's why we have the United States Armed Forces.
In his speech, Secretary Hegseth declared some new standards for the appearance and physical shape of military members. How do you think that will be received?
Well, I think all these men and women who are there intend to comport themselves with the highest standards, to look good, to be physically fit, to have their hair cut and combed the right way. So I don't think anybody has any issues with that. The real concern is the unwarranted firing of general and flag officers, the firing of inspector generals and judge advocate generals, and this general idea that's gone through the U.S. government to get rid of the people who understood Russia. Russia is a principal adversary of the United States. They consider themselves at war with us. So those are the kinds of things that I hear that are rumblings in terms of the changes made thus far. We like the budget. I think we do need to reinvest in strategic defense. These are the president's initiatives. Fine. But let's keep in mind that these men and women in uniform are trained. They want to serve the country. but they want to serve it a proper way. And that's not being employed against American citizens.
And lastly, was there anything at all said today that perhaps raised your own eyebrows?
I hope the American people understand that when we came out of the Vietnam War, we completely retooled the American Armed Forces. And we did focus on warrior training and lethality and these kinds of combat skills. And we kept it even when the Cold War ended. So a lot of what the Secretary Hegseth said is it's redigested stuff we've been saying to ourselves for the last 30, 40, and 50 years.
All right, General Wesley Clark, we thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're learning chilling new details tonight in the deadly shooting and fire at a Michigan church that killed 4 and injured 8 others. What friends are now saying about the suspected shooter and the heroes who saved lives. Alex Perez reports from the scene.
Tonight, lifelong friends of the man police say carried out the deadly attack on a Mormon church in Michigan say he dated a Mormon woman and descended into heavy methamphetamine use while living in Utah. Peter and Francis Tersini say after alleged gunman Thomas Jacob Sanford's relationship ended with the woman and he returned to Michigan, he had changed. Peter Tersini says Sanford went on rants about Mormons, adding it was an absolute gut punch when he learned his friend is the man authorities say carried out the attack. Francis Tersini writing in a Facebook post, that man that came back from Utah wasn't the same. He was a puppet and the puppeteer was Satan. Police say the gunman, an Iraq War veteran, killed 4 people Sunday morning. And tonight, we're learning about one of the heroes inside the church. Greg McCath's family telling ABC News he tried to stop the gunman. He was shot 3 times and remains in the ICU.
Alex Perez joins us now. Alex, how is that hero doing tonight?
Well, Lindsay, McCath's family says he is facing a long road to recovery. Officials here say they're working around the clock to pinpoint a motive. Lindsay?
Alex, thank you. Now to the unusual occurrence in the Atlantic Ocean. 2 hurricanes, Umberto and Imelda, so close to one another, bringing strong surf to the East Coast. Powerful waves are toppling 5 homes on North Carolina's Outer Banks. Here's Victor Oquendo.
Tonight, powerful waves fueled by Hurricanes Umberto and Imelda pounding the Outer Banks, sending multiple homes crashing into the Atlantic Ocean. Video from our station WVEC showing at least 5 homes toppling into the ocean within 45 minutes in Buxton, North Carolina. Massive piles of splintered debris strewn across the sand, the roof of one home resting in the surf. The storms delivering a final blow to some of these homes, all of them unoccupied and expected to eventually succumb to Mother Nature. For years, this area has grappled with devastating coastal erosion. This Buxton home crumbling into the water just 2 weeks ago. Back in August, officials in nearby Rodanthe told us they were concerned about these houses, completely exposed as a different hurricane, Erin, made a glancing blow. In all, at least 17 homes have collapsed in the last 5 years.
Such devastating scenes there. Our thanks to Victor Oquendo. Let's bring in WABC Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg. Lee, time this out for us.
Okay, Lindsay, well, it's great to see that we have this right-hand turn of these 2 tropical systems, and they have been influencing each other. It's actually an example of a rare phenomenon called the Fujiwara effect, where when you have tropical storms that are close enough to each other, they almost do a tropical tango, if you will, around a central pivot point, and they pull at each other. And in this case, Umberto is towing Imelda to the east, and that's why it's headed out to sea. Unfortunately, this one's going straight toward Bermuda. Could be a Cat 2 hurricane as it approaches the island, and we could have some really gusty winds. See how everything is kind of interacting together. Now, in terms of the impacts on Bermuda, gusty winds, 1 to 2 inches of rain, coastal flooding, and surge. Meanwhile, these 2 storms have been in the Atlantic for a while, so they act like plungers, so the waves keep going. High surf advisories will be continuing through the end of the week, and the high rip current risk is there. So there's plenty of bonus summer weather around, but if you go to the beaches, not safe to swim. The Northeast, by the way, not feeling like beach weather as it cools off for the first day of October. Lindsay?
And we hope Umberto continues towing Imelda to the east. L to the G. Well, thank you so much for the forecast, as always. Coming up, the widespread potential impacts of a government shutdown, including on your travel plans, the long wait times and interruptions that loom without airport agents and air traffic controllers on the job, and what parents need to know about a new car seat recall and the risk of a choking hazard. Plus, how did a thief drive off with 2 highly trained hawks in a utility vehicle during an NFL game? Police in Los Angeles are searching for the suspect. Welcome back. We wanted to dive a little deeper into the impacts of the shutdown. Our team of reporters covering aviation, the Justice Department, Supreme Court, and military have more.
So as President Trump and Secretary Hegseth spoke to these commanding military generals, there was this threat of a government shutdown that could impact as many as 2 million service members. We know that all of these service members will be told that they need to report to duty without pay, even if the government shuts down. So we are told that they will get a paycheck about October 1st, but that if a negotiation does not move forward, if some sort of legislation for spending is not agreed upon, then that all these service members will be forced to miss a paycheck later in the month of October. Now, I do think it's worth pointing out that President Trump is using these National Guard troops in cities like Portland, Memphis, and D.C. A lot of them have left paying civilian jobs and are being asked to work in these streets where they're collecting trash. They're doing other beautification projects such as spreading mulch, and they will do so without pay unless Congress reaches a deal.
You likely won't see any major impacts during government shutdown, at least in the first few days, but things will change if it goes into weeks or months. Once that first paycheck is missed, we tend to see people start to call in sick. So while TSA agents are obligated to report to duty because they are considered essential employees, it's the same thing with air traffic controllers, we do see more sick calls as parents are concerned or unable to pay for childcare. Or some cases, these workers are now Ubering or driving for Lyft to make extra cash because they haven't been paid. When they're working 6 or 7 days a week, that can lead to exhaustion and more sick calls. That will mean longer waits at checkpoints. As far as air traffic controllers, back during the 2019 shutdown in the New York City area, a number of controllers began to call out sick after the 30th day, and that led to some significant flight disruptions, and that is what some say ended that 35-day shutdown back in 2019. So hopefully we won't get to a point where it lasts several weeks or even happens at all, but if it does, again, in the very early days, you likely won't see many impacts, but as it goes on, you can count on delays.
All eyes have been on this Justice Department in recent weeks. We've seen deployments of federal agents to cities like Chicago and Portland, where ICE facilities have been under attack. There's also been prosecutions and investigations launched into President Trump's political enemies at his urging, like former FBI Director James Comey, who was indicted last week. Now, there's questions as to how a government shutdown will impact this building. I'm told by officials here that they expect little in the way of impacts on things like criminal prosecutions. Those are considered accepted activities during a government shutdown. The real impact that you'll see out of this building during a government shutdown will be in civil litigation, things like the Office of the Pardon Attorney. There's also questions as to immigration enforcement. A previous Senate report found that 55,000 immigration cases had to be, or immigration hearings had to be canceled during the 2018 and 2019 shutdown. But there's a workaround effort going on here at the Justice Department. I'm told that based on President Trump's declaration of a national emergency, the Justice Department expects that all of its ongoing immigration litigation will remain ongoing in the event of a government shutdown. So they're really trying to see, at least in the near term, not a real big impact on the activities of this building in terms of prosecutions, immigration cases, and those deployments of federal agents that we've seen around the country.
In previous government shutdowns, the nation's 107 federal district courts and appeals courts have found ways to stay open using court fees and other funding mechanisms, but this time could be different. A spokeswoman for the federal courts tells ABC News that they will begin running out of Monday on Friday, October 3rd, potentially meaning curtailed operations of the nation's justice system, something we haven't seen in shutdowns of at least the last 30 years. Some of the nation's judges will remain paid, they'll remain on the job, but some of the 33,000 federal court workers, the clerks, the marshals, the janitors that keep the courts running, could be furloughed. A top official says that is, quote, a very sharp change from the past. As for the Supreme Court, the nation's highest court, well, it will remain open. All operations will continue as normal. A spokesperson at the Supreme Court says they rely on permanent funds, not annual appropriations, and don't expect to be affected.
Our thanks to Ann Flaherty, Sam Sweeney, Devin Dwyer, and Alex Mallon. And coming up, a eulogy to a bygone era. The death of AOL's dial-up internet is here. We look back at the transformative technology that first connected us all, albeit slowly, to the online world. Plus, the backlash in Hollywood tonight after a talent agency created an AI-generated actor and what it means for the film industry. Welcome back, everyone. It is the end of a technological era. The death of AOL's dial-up internet is here. Today, AOL shut down its dial-up feature, a relic of the 90s and early 2000s. But once upon a dial-up tone, it was the first way many people were able to get widespread access to the online world through telephone lines and modems. Tonight, we eulogize the transformative technology by the numbers. America Online, known now as AOL, introduced dial-up in 1989. At the time, the service only allowed users to access AOL servers. Dial-up popularity really took hold in the 1990s, though its average speed set at about 56 kilobits a second. That is thousands of times slower than broadband internet, what many of us use today. This isn't the first iconic part of the company AOL has ended. In 2017, AOL shut down its popular instant messaging service AIM. The company was sold to Apollo Global Management in 2021, becoming the new Yahoo Inc. As of today, September 30th, the dial-up service and all of AOL's associated software is discontinued. AOL says it routinely evaluates its products and services and has decided to discontinue dial-up internet. AOL says no other benefits for customers will be impacted. Recent census data reports a fair number of internet users still rely on dial-up, mainly in rural areas, as many as 163,000 people. Still ahead, it's one of the worst common cold seasons in years. What to do to keep yourself safe from the sniffles. A legendary actor, director, and author Henry Winkler is here to talk about the mystery and mayhem in his latest children's book, Detective Duck, The Mystery at Emerald Pond. Why more than 300,000 child car seats are being recalled, what happened after elephants charged a canoe full of tourists, and how cyber criminals took down all production of a beer and beverage giant. These stories and more in tonight's Rundown. There's a new recall involving child car seats from popular brand Evenflo. It's recalling about 324,000 child seats because foam in the headrest could be a choking hazard. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, the headrest foam is not adequately secured away from the child. The recall involves some Evenflo Revolve 360 Slim models. Owners who registered their products will be notified on October 31st. Evenflo will send owners additional tape to secure the foam at no charge.
I've really been struggling for the last 24 hours. A lot of tears.
The search is on today for two stolen Specialized Hawks that work for SoFi Stadium in Southern California. When a thief took off with a motorized cart outside of SoFi Stadium on Sunday, he likely had no idea that inside containers in the back were two Harris Hawks named Alice and Bubba. They were there to work the Rams game. They are used to scare other birds away from the stadium during large events like NFL games. Police are on the lookout.
I really need to get them back by no later than Thursday, because then that means they'll have gone like 4 days without water or food.
The common cold already has people reaching for the tissue box. The latest CDC data shows common cold viruses are at the highest level since 2022. Activity typically peaks in mid to late September, with flu activity often following, peaking between December and February. There are no vaccines to protect against the common cold, but simple prevention measures like thorough hand washing may reduce your risk. A cyber attack on Japanese beer and beverage giant Asahi has halted production at its factories. The company says it has no idea when it can resume. The company has 30 plants in Japan making beer, beverage, and food products, but it is still investigating whether all of them have stopped production. Order processing, shipping, and call center functions have all been suspended, but so far there are no signs of personal information being leaked. An African adventure took a terrifying turn as an elephant charged directly at a group of tourists in Botswana. The female elephant flipped over their canoes, knocking two people into the crocodile-infested waters. The elephant then tried to trample one of the women before turning away. Fortunately, no one was seriously injured. The elephant was apparently trying to protect her young. Tonight, some of Hollywood's biggest names are sounding the alarm over a previously unheard of newcomer. Tilly Norwood is AI generated and looking for work. Now, the growing backlash over an AI generated actor who's reportedly seeking representation. Here's Matt Gutman.
The Sunday roast. You've seen just about everything on the big screen, except this.
Tilly Norwood, 100% AI generated.
Tilly Norwood is an AI-generated actress gaining attention and drawing swift backlash as interest from a number of Hollywood talent agencies is growing. Eileen Vandervelden, who runs the company that created Tilly, said they will soon be in talks to have their AI character represented by a talent agency. Vandervelden once said she wanted the AI-generated actress to be the next Natalie Portman or Scarlett Johansson. Facebook and Instagram accounts for Tilly Norwood portray it as an aspiring actress, perfectly imperfect, down to the freckles and blemishes, with a British accent to boot.
Thanks for watching.
The notion that Vandervelden claims that talent agents were circling has drawn the wrath of Hollywood royalty. Emily Blunt telling Variety's Clayton Davis.
That's an AI.
Yes, that is a...
Good Lord. We're screwed. That is really, really scary.
And it's about to be signed.
Whoopi Goldberg spoke about the loss of a human connection.
Well, if you stick with this, with AI, you won't have any connection to anything but your phone.
Hollywood's powerful actors union SAG-AFTRA with a statement saying creativity is and should remain human-centered. The union is opposed to the replacement of human performers by synthetics. The use of AI-generated actors and voices was a main concern of actors during their historic strike in the summer of 2023. Tilly is the first creation from Sequoia, the world's first AI talent studio. Responding to the controversy, Vandervelden saying, like many forms of art before her, Tilly sparks conversation, and that in itself shows the power of creativity.
Our thanks to Matt Gutman. Henry Winkler has spent more than 5 decades shining as one of Hollywood's favorite character actors, whether as the Fonz on Happy Days or recently as acting teacher Gene Cousineau. On HBO's Barry, he has captivated audiences with his warmth and charm. Winkler has also held a storied career as an author of children's books, first with the Hank Zipzer series about the adventures of a child with dyslexia, and now with the 3rd volume in his Detective Duck series. In Detective Duck, The Mystery at Emerald Pond, Winkler, along with his longtime co-author Lynn Oliver and illustrator Dan Santat, take readers on another hilarious chapter book adventure, this time at the Emerald Pond Games. And we're so thrilled to have Henry Winkler back, friend of the show. Thank you so much for coming back on.
It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so we got the 3rd in the Detective Duck series.
Oh, my goodness.
What keeps you coming back to these characters?
Well, first of all, she is so much fun to write. During the pandemic, my partner, Lynn Oliver, called and said, hey, remember that book that Hank Zipzer pulled off the shelf from the library? It was called Detective Duck.
Yes.
It was just a title. Wouldn't that make a great character? In this book, we have friendship, we have friendly competition, we have jealousy, and we have neighbors, and we have the idea that it's okay for your friend to have another friend. There's room for everybody.
And let's talk about, you mentioned Zipzer, the first character,
yes.
Zipzer.
Who's Hank, he is me.
Yes, a child who has dyslexia early on.
Right.
And why was that so important? Because a lot of your big fans may not know that you have dyslexia.
I am completely dyslexic. I was told I would never achieve. It was hard for me to read. And now I am the author. This is our 40th children's book. Amazing. I am amazed.
It is amazing, and proof of what you can do despite.
You can do anything.
Yes.
You have no idea what you can accomplish until you just put one foot in front of the other. True.
Obviously, having dyslexia often is perceived as a challenge.
Yes.
Was there anything about it that helped you as far as whether it was acting?
You know what? That's a great question. It was always, it made me feel less than. I never knew what I had. I was only called stupid. When I found out, when my first son, my stepson, Jed, in the 3rd grade, we had him tested. And when they told us about him, I went, oh my goodness, that's me. And I found out I wasn't stupid, I wasn't lazy, I literally had something with a name.
Not until you were an adult.
Not until I was in my 30s. So the first thing that happened was I was angry. I mean, all the yelling, all the punishment, all the demeaning language was for naught. I had something that was like given to me by the people who are yelling at me. The second thing that happened was I went, okay, I'm dyslexic. Okay, I have to deal with it. And the third thing was, I'm not sure I would be sitting in this chair chatting with you about all of these wonderful things that have happened in my life if I didn't have the fight.
It was the struggle that
I don't know.
you...
I'm thinking that, yes, it taught me to be, a very short, neurotic person, taught me to be tough. Taught me to, I'm going to find my own way around this. It's like writing the books. I don't sit at a computer. I write with Lynn. There is your way to do something, not a way.
And so what is your advice to not only parents, but teachers and the children who are... I just heard a story today from a parent who was saying when they were teaching their son to read, still at 7, and he was having a hard time, and they were getting so frustrated with him, but not even realizing it.
The most important thing is to see the child in front of you. As a parent, a brother, sister, aunt, uncle, teacher, to see who is in front of you. They are not having a hard time because they want to make trouble. They are not acting out because they want to make trouble. It is the wiring that is hereditary. So if you see a problem, even if you cannot solve the problem, even if you don't know what to do, what you know how to do is to make that child feel okay about being who they are. I think that is the basis of living. Making sure a child has a sense of self.
Funny little story that you reminded me of. You said you just read your first novel at 31.
Yes.
You did an interview where you said you didn't learn how to really act until you were 72.
That is true.
What took you so long?
I'm a slow learner. Do you know what? My self-image was so down around my ankles for so long. I had a dream at 27. That's when I got the Fonz. And I changed my voice, and it unleashed my imagination. And then I knew what I wanted at 27, but it took me until Barry at 72 to really come into comfort level, being able to do what my imagination wanted.
You are just a month away from turning 80.
Who?
A month away from turning 80
Me?
years old.
I have to check my license.
That's right. That's right. You
80.
What keeps you so
Where's my
young?
walker? You know what? I don't know. I don't know. I'm just thankful that I have the energy to continue to do what I'm doing. I do this wonderful new show on the History Channel.
Yes.
Called Hazardous History. We did 8 episodes. So many people watched. We were just picked up for another 30.
Well, we say with so much gratitude to you, thank you so much for the conversation.
It is always a pleasure, isn't it?
Always, the pleasure is all mine.
We always have a good time.
Yes, we do. And the third book of his Detective Duck series, Detective Duck, The Mystery at Emerald Pond, is out today and can be purchased anywhere books are sold. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Lindsay Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.